The rainforest didn't do quiet the way cities did. It didn't have a hum of power lines or distant traffic to fill the gaps. It had its own noise, fat drops hitting leaves, insects tuning up like broken radios, frogs clicking from hidden puddles, and birds that seemed to argue with one another from canopy height. Tonight, though, there were holes in it. Places where the jungle sound paused, as if something had walked through and the world held its breath until it passed. Mia kept the Uta's headlights off and rolled the last 100 meters on momentum. Gravel whispered under the tires. The old railway maintenance yard appeared as a darker smudge among darker trees. A chain-link fence, a sagging shed, a line of rusted equipment that looked like animal skeletons when the moon caught them. "Here," she said, voice low without trying. Her throat already felt raw from holding it down for so long. Tom, sitting passenger, leaned forward and peered through the windscreen, as if looking harder could make the darkness less thick. He was mid-30s, sunburn that never quite healed, and hands that trembled in a way he tried to hide by keeping them busy, fidgeting with the strap of his small backpack, checking the same pocket, checking it again. He had been a paramedic for 8 years. That should have made him steady. It hadn't. Not this week. I in the back seat. Jules shifted and the Uta rocked slightly. Jules was younger, 21, maybe 22, hair shaved close to the scalp and rain jacket too big, like she'd grabbed it from someone else's closet. She held the torch between her knees, thumb poised over the switch, and kept her eyes on the side windows, as if expecting hands to bloom from the trees. Mia killed the engine. The sudden absence of vibration made her teeth feel loud in her own skull. "No lights unless we have to," she said. Jules nodded once. Tom didn't respond. He was staring at the fence. There was a shape caught in it about 50 meters away, hanging at an angle like a coat on a hook. Mia watched him watch it. "It's probably a pig," she lied. Tom swallowed. "Yeah," he said, not believing her. They sat like that for a few breaths, letting their ears adjust. The rainforest tried to fill the silence, but something kept snagging on it, like a thread catching on a nail. That a soft click came from somewhere beyond the fence. Not an insect. Not a frog. Too crisp that Mia's hand moved to the door handle and stopped. She waited. Another click, a fraction closer, then nothing. She could picture the sound as a point in space, hovering between trees. That Jules's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. Wide, questioning. Mia leaned toward Tom until her mouth was close to his ear. "We go straight to the shed. Grab what we can. 10 minutes. Tom nodded, but his gaze kept sliding back to the hanging shape. It twitched once, lightly, as if a breeze had touched it. Mia opened her door carefully. The hinge complained in a small, ancient squeal. Somewhere in the yard, something answered with a sound that shouldn't have belonged out here. Mia. It wasn't a voice. It was a recording of one, dragged through wet gravel. Her name, one syllable stretched wrong, like it had been learned by a mouth that didn't understand shape. Jules sucked in air through her teeth. Tom's head snapped around, searching. Mia stood very still with one foot on the gravel. Every hair on her arms lifted. The rainforest seemed to pause, the way it did before a storm. She didn't answer. She kept her face blank, like the thing in the trees could read expression. A second later, a faint cough, human, tired, came from the same direction. Then nothing. Tom leaned out his door. "Hello." Mia shot him a look sharp enough to cut. Tom froze, mouth still open, and slowly shut it again. They moved as a unit then, because standing still made them targets of their own imagination. Mia swung the Uta door closed without letting it latch loudly. Jules slipped out the other side, light on her feet. Tom stepped down last, and gravel crunched under his boot. The yard smelled like wet metal and old grease, layered under leaf mold. Mia had worked here years ago, railway maintenance, back when the biggest emergencies were fallen trees on tracks and idiot tourists wandering too close to cliffs. The shed door was exactly where her memory said it would be, a rectangle of darker dark with a padlock that had been cut at some point and never replaced. Mia crossed the open ground, knees loose, shoulders relaxed on purpose. The torch in her hand stayed off. The moon was enough to see shapes, and shapes were enough. Behind her, Jules moved like a shadow tethered to Mia's spine. Tom lagged half a step back, eyes flicking, scanning, always scanning. From the trees came another click. Closer again, then a small scrape, as if fingernails had dragged across bark. Mia didn't run. Running made noise. Running made you breathe hard. She'd seen too many people die this week because they couldn't stop their lungs from pleading. The shed door gave with a tug. Inside, the air was cooler, trapped and stale, with a tang of mildew and rat piss. Mia slipped in and held the door for the others. Once they were inside, she eased it shut until it rested without fully closing, leaving a thin line of moonlight. Jules clicked her torch on, then immediately covered most of the beam with her palm, so it became a dim glow. The light caught racks of tools, old signal equipment, coils of cable. A first aid cabinet hung on the wall like a joke. Tom went to it anyway. His hands were sure when they had something to do. He pulled it open, rummaged, and made a small sound of relief. Bandages, he whispered, then glanced at Mia as if asking permission to be happy for a second. Mia nodded. Her left forearm throbbed under the sleeve of her jacket, where a shallow bite mark had broken skin 3 days ago. Not deep, not tearing. A graze, really. She'd told them it was a dog. She'd watched their faces carefully when she said it. She didn't like how quickly Tom had accepted it. Jules was at a shelf, pulling down 2 cans of insect repellent and a half-empty bottle of methylated spirits. "This'll do," she murmured. "Take the headlamps too," Mia said. Her voice sounded strange in the enclosed space. Too loud. She pointed to a row of orange vests and a bin of batteries. Tom shoved supplies into his backpack with practiced speed. "If we can get back to the road," he whispered, "we can make for Cairns. The hospital's gone," Jules said flatly, not looking up. "My mum was there." Tom stopped moving. His throat bobbed. Mia stepped between them before the moment could spread into something bigger. "We're not going to Cairns," she said. "We're going to the tunnels." Jules looked at her then, torchlight carving hollows under her eyes. Why? Because it was stone, and stone didn't have windows. Because Mia had seen the infected avoid tight, echoing spaces at first, like sound hurt them. Because she needed a place where she could hear them coming. But she didn't say any of that. She just said, "It's defensible. It's dry." Tom's eyes flicked to her sleeve again. Mia tugged it down without thinking. Outside, something brushed against the shed wall. Not a thump, a gentle pressure, like someone leaning their shoulder there to listen. All 3 of them went still. The sound came again, closer to the door now, a soft, deliberate scratch. The kind of scratch you'd make if you wanted the person inside to hear, but not be sure what they were hearing. Then, through the crack of moonlight at the door, a shape passed, not fast, not stumbling, controlled. Jules raised her torch a fraction, but Mia caught her wrist and held it down. Jules's pulse fluttered under Mia's fingers. The faint sound drifted in, breathing, almost silent, like someone trying to breathe through cloth that Tom's mouth was open again, but no sound came out. His fear was a physical thing in the shed, thick and metallic that a whisper scraped in from outside. Help. It wasn't a plea. It was a lure. The word didn't carry desperation. It carried imitation, like a bird copying a ringtone. Mia closed her eyes for half a second and pictured every clip she'd seen this week. The security footage from the servo where a man stepped out to check on a woman crying beside her car, and she lifted her head, face slack, and moved like a sudden animal. The footage from a school where the teacher told kids to stay quiet, and something in the hallway repeated quiet, quiet, in the teacher's own voice that she'd heard the rumors too. That it started with speech loss, that people went mute before they went violent, that you could tell because they stopped answering questions, stopped saying your name back. Then the stories got worse. That the infected didn't moan or scream like in movies. That they listened. That they waited until you said something important, then repeated it later in the dark. Mia, the thing outside said again, softer, closer. The syllables sounded wet. Jules's eyes shone. Tears, maybe. Terror, definitely. Tom's hands clenched around a roll of bandage until the plastic crinkled. The shed door handle shifted, barely. A test. Mia leaned toward the crack and stared at the thin line of moonlight. She could see nothing but the suggestion of shadow on shadow. Don't, she mouthed, though she didn't know if she was talking to Tom or the thing outside, or to herself. The handle turned a fraction more. Metal whispered. Then, from somewhere farther out in the yard, another sound answered. A single click. Then another. Then a third, like stones tapped together, not one. More than once they had been surrounded without hearing it happen. Mia's mind did a quick, brutal inventory. One small torch, one backpack, a handful of tools, 3 people, and a door that wasn't locked. The handle began to turn with steady confidence. Mia reached for the nearest thing on the shelf without looking. Her fingers closed around a flare gun, old, orange plastic, the kind used for track emergencies. She didn't remember it being there. She didn't care. She thumbed it open and felt, with a sick flicker of hope, that there was one flare in the chamber. She raised it toward the door, arm rigid. Tom saw it, and his eyes widened as if she'd pulled out a live snake. Mia, she cut him off with a look that begged him to stay silent. The handle turned fully. The door began to swing inward, slow, as if the thing outside wanted them to see it coming. Moonlight spilled across the floor. A face appeared in the gap, pale in the silver light, eyes too focused, mouth closed in a line that might once have been a smile. And from the darkness behind that face, something else whispered, close enough to be almost inside the shed. Tom. The syllable landed like a hook in the gut. Mia didn't know how it had learned his name, but it had, and the door kept opening. Mia kept the flare gun trained on the gap. Her shoulders burned from holding still. She could smell the thing before she could fully see it. Wet clothes left too long in a washing machine. Breath sour with something feral underneath. The face in the doorway wasn't slack the way she expected. It was intent. The eyes tracked the shed interior with a hunter's patience, taking in Tom's shape, Jules's torch glow, Mia's raised arm. A young man, maybe late 20s, hair plastered to his forehead. His lips were sealed tight, as if the muscles around his mouth had forgotten how to move. Then his head tilted, quick and bird-like, listening. From behind him, deeper in the yard, the clicking came again, answering clicks, spaced like signals. Tom made a noise in his throat, a helpless start of speech. Mia snapped, no, but she said it too late. The syllable left her mouth like an offering. The man in the doorway twitched. His jaw worked once. Then he exhaled a faint whisper.